ready, set, go.
Is this thing on?
I can never get enough volume, Phil.
Never. Ladies and gentlemen, making his much awaited debut, we have Super Texas Ben Wiford on the podcast tonight.
Yes.
What do you say, Ben?
What's going on?
I don't know who gave you the Super Texas name. Somebody in a comment section somewhere.
Texas Ben was fine.
It was, but
I'm not even sure I really deserve that. Being how I'm lived 35 years of my life in Ohio. But
yeah, but I think you're the most Texas man I know.
I'm a Buckeye by birth, but a Texan by choice.
Yeah, there you go. I like it.
Yeah, buddy.
All right, so tonight we're going to discuss Jim Plank, and actually, I'm kind of glad we waited because we're kind of coming in here on the tail end of things. I know that Beyond the Vow did a very good episode about this. They released it a couple days ago, but I am glad that there's been some developments that happened that we'll be able to get into as well, as far as Jim Plank's response and all that. So, actually, I don't know what direction to go. Should we just go straight into this, or I guess Ben? I think that everybody knows you, but I'm assuming there's a lot of people don't. Give us a little bit about your background. You come from CHM, right?
Yes, sir. A lot of people know probably a little bit about me. Not a lot of people know me that well. I've been away from it for almost 20 years. Was raised in a Bible Holiness church. Went to Camp Gilead as a kid. That was pretty much the main camp that we regularly attended because we were dairy farmers. We didn't get that far from home. Luckily, I stayed away from a lot of, didn't have quite as many services under my belt as some of the rest of y'all, but I was always kind of an outsider, even though I was lifelong raised in CHM. I was 100% sincere, thought I was saved and sanctified probably when I was, a few times over between 10, 12, 14, 16 years old. And I, came to a point where kind of got it, turned 18, 19, somewhere in there, and had a lot of questions that couldn't be answered. And once I got kind of out of the bubble I was raised in and visiting Penview and different things, I just came to the realization that these people just don't, there's nothing behind it. It's all fluff. And they're saying one thing and living totally different life. And, kind of had a couple years, was a little wild. One thing that probably really changed my life a lot was visiting a Baptist church my brother was going to at the time. They were probably to this point, any church that I've seen, the single most church that's a biblical definition of a church where they had a lot of outreach. They made sure everybody's involved. I remember like the first time I was there on Sunday morning, went to Sunday school, and there was some other farm kid that somebody said, "Hey, you're taking the class with you," and like the youth pastor or something, he comes over and talks to me. And, I was so used to all this, like secrecy and the weirdness and stuff. And he just asked me if I was saved or ever been saved. I'm like stammering around. Well, you don't. And he's like, he's like, well, I said, you don't understand the kind of church I came from. So, well, they preach salvation and, nope, doesn't matter. You're a Christian, they're Christian or whatever. There's none of this de-Christianizing of, oh, well, improper sleeve length. So therefore, that you didn't really get saved at that church without the full life.
Right.
And life's taken some twists and turns since then. And I really kind of just was, for the most part, completely away from, had a lot of questions, never really had anybody to talk to when I was 18, 19, 20 about all the questions and issues other than one of my brothers, but he sometimes was in, sometimes was out. And even really just some of these Facebook groups is where I kind of got back into dissecting what's really wrong with them. And then that's when I really kind of came into understanding of just how rampant sexual abuse is. And that to me, that's just the absolute worst thing. The unbiblical doctrine, the confusion, the damage they do is horrific. But the amount of children that are messed with in these midst where they allegedly don't sin is astounding.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. The the stories that roll into us, and they never stop. They never stop. And I always think that I'm not going to be surprised anymore, and I usually always am. It always feels like a gut punch every time you hear a new one, because it's somebody's life that's turned completely upside down.
Yes, sir.
All right, so we will get into. Let's go ahead and get into this clip here of Jim Plank. So Brian Holiness posted this. Jim was preaching. What was it? Canaan, what's this called? World Changers Week? Is that what it's called at UBC?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Whose world are they changing?
Their own little world.
It's a fantasy land.
So, Canaan, you live closer to UBC than any of us. Are you familiar with World Change? Like, what's their focus? What do they do? What do they do during World Changes? Is this like because they did Facebook Live it, so it's not completely an internal thing?
Yeah, no. To be honest with you, I'm not exactly sure what World Changes is. I've heard about it. I've heard of it. You're right. I do. I only live like 45 minutes from there, but to be honest, I'm not really sure what World Changes is exactly. So this was during World Changes then?
Yes. I hope I'm getting that name right.
No, that sounds right. I thought, for whatever reason, I thought that they just had Plank come in there to basically just talk to the kids.
I thought it was chapel day.
Yeah, during a chapel. I didn't realize, because sometimes they'll bring in somebody for chapel, but this was during World Changers.
Now, from what I understand, they had some different, a couple of different speakers. At Jim Plank, another fellow, I don't remember his name, and they were I think they were given topics, and they would talk about family and all this, that, and the other, and then usually Jim then would preach like what would they call it, an evangelistic message. So then they'd have a normal church service in the evenings as well.
Good.
And I think that's kind of what was going on. So anyways, let's just get into it. Let's play it. Jim Plank starts saying some things. And honestly, I was surprised he said this out loud, to be honest with you. But anyways, we'll just get into it, then we'll respond. You guys holler at me if you want me to stop it at any point.
I often think of Brent Vernon's song that God, no question, helped him to write. I printed the words there. I've been given something that does not contain a price. And I'll tell you what, I get mad, and I think it's righteous indignation at how quickly some of our young people throw away something that's so valuable. I am a third-generation holiness person. Do you think for one instant I want to stand before God and say that I've thrown that all away for some other easier, newer, brighter way? Do you think I want to stand before God? Was my heritage perfect? No. If any of you know my dad, you know it's a miracle that I'm here today. But of course, our homes are not necessarily perfect. We've all seen things in the church and around that don't always make us happy. And I'm very sad that occasionally there's someone that I will meet, as I have. I was even sharing with Brother Buckler last night something that just killed me recently, of a pastor who had a moral failure and messing with kids in his church. And so if you've been a victim of that kind of thing, Brother Nichols, I think, I have to have patience with some of those people when they're, if that happened to you in the Catholic Church, you wouldn't want to be a Catholic anymore. And if it happened to you in the Holiness Church, you don't want to be a holiness person anymore. I mean, God is still true, and His Word is true.
I'm going to stop it right there.
That's enough.
That's a pretty good place to start. There was a lot right there.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, he goes through this heritage thing, which you'll hear so many CHM people talk about this and the heritage. I've been handed a wonderful heritage and heritage this and heritage that.
But most of that's been driven by James Plank. That is the man who will not let that die. I remember probably 25 years ago. Therefore, my parents didn't go to IHC because they were too liberal, even though they lived in Western Ohio a lot of the time. They moved to Knox County, Ohio, around Mount Vernon area. And at some point, my older siblings went to IHC. And my oldest brother, which he's a little like James Plank. So I, not the preacher, the oldest brother. Y'all probably don't know. he comes home, and I remember him spouting this nonsense about, well, we must have holiness somewhere in our ancestry because he was all hyped up on the heritage of holiness.
Oh, man.
You know, here it is 25 years later, and James Plank's still beating this drum about heritage of holiness and 3 generations. Well, yeah, that's about the max you can be because, you know, these denominations got fired up about 3 generations ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't understand the emphasis on the heritage of holiness. And again, I think we mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, Kanan, talking about whenever they say holiness, they mean second work, second blessing, standards, all that. That's what they mean.
Most of the time, yeah.
But it has to do with bloodlines and insinuating they are superior blood and that they have they have this generational thing, and it's a false sense of elevation for them.
Yes, it is. It reminds me of like what's the movie Mulan, where they have to honor the ancestors and stuff. That's kind of honestly, that's the vibe I get from it. It's like, I don't get it, but you'll hear them hollering about it all day long and act as if it's some kind of thing they've been given by God to defend. And I don't.
I wonder if
that.
His entertainment is reading the genealogy chapters in the Bible, in the Old Testament. You know? Maybe so. That's why he's so obsessed with, you know, so and so begat so and so, and he, you know, and on and on and on and on. Yes. You know, things the rest of us find not quite the most entertaining stories in the Scripture.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So then we go on to. And I feel like some more of this will take shape for people that don't know, they haven't heard this clip before. Some of it will take shape here in the following minutes of the clip. But you have him talking about child abuse. And he called it a moral failure or moral failing, however it was he phrased it. Which to me, it's like, okay, the CHM does not like to say sin. They don't like that. And I've even noticed when I was talking with some people the other day, and we'll talk about, but you know what? If you slip up, grace is there. And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm still saying it.
When you sin.
If you sin.
When you sin.
When you sin. Exactly. And he didn't even call child abuse sin. It was a moral failure that was committed by one of the preachers.
I think we ought to get into the facts of this so-called moral failure.
Now, are we?
Because
yes, I think
we're pretty certain that we know exactly who he's talking about.
I would say we have a good idea. Yes, and we mentioned. I think I went briefly over the headlines when this broke, but I didn't have much information on this at the time. And Ben, you've done some research on it, right?
I have the press release says the former pastor of a church in Andreas was jailed Wednesday after being charged by the West Penn Township Police with indecent assault involving 3 juvenile girls between 2007 and 2012. Now, that's a 5-year span, but on down here, it seems like it's a 15-year span. But Marvin Leroy Mosley, 43, Mifflin County, was arraigned on 2 felony counts, each of indecent assault of a person under the age of 13 and corruption of minors, where the defendant is age 18 or above, which would mean she's 18 now. She was a minor then. 2 misdemeanor counts of a person under the age of 16. He was arraigned, committed to prison, unable to post $100,000 straight cash bail. Judge says Mosley is no longer a pastor, but at the time of his arrest was serving outside of at a church outside of Schuylkill County, which I believe is in New York, where they had moved him to. You know, I think there was some issues when he was in Pennsylvania. In a paperwork filed with the court, Police Chief James Bonner said the charges stem from incidents that came to light on April 27th when a 26-year-old woman reported being sexually abused by Pastor Marvin Mosley from the time she was 7 until she was about 15. So now we got an 8-year range. And I'm also, you know, 7-year-old is a little girl. There is nothing sexual about a little girl. That's a sick individual.
Yes, you're correct.
The woman said she knew Mosley from around 2003 when her parents became involved in God's Missionary Church, Penns Creek, Pennsylvania. Woman said Mosley graduated from Penview Bible Institute and was assigned to their church in 2003. At one point in 2007, the woman said Mosley touched her inappropriately and by putting his hands up under her dress. Then the police chief says that the woman also reported that 2 other girls relayed stories that they were assaulted by Mosley. One was interviewed and reported Mosley having inappropriate contact with her starting when she was about 10. On May 8th, Bonner said Mosley was interviewed and Mosley admitted touching the woman who reported the incident and said it began when he was about 28. He's 28, she's 7.
Oh.
He also admitted touching the other 2 girls. Bonner said Mosley said he had been married for about 7 years at the time and did not know what sex was, BS, adding he was lost and unfulfilled. Yeah, well, wouldn't his saved and sanctified status and serving in the church be fulfilling and he wouldn't be needing to touch little girls? He said Mosley reported he had been touching the girls for a time span of 15 years. So it said 5 years up there. That's what the charge is. So how many was in that 15 years? We've got 3 that have said it. But police chief said Mosley said he would become aroused when the girls walked into the room. He did not think anything was wrong by touching them. Yeah. Well, and they're all, he said here somewhere that he went from one girl to the next. So that indicates to me there's probably a lot more than 3 girls. But we know 3. He's admitted to it. He's been arraigned on it. There's no sweeping. Well, they're going to try to sweep it under the rug, and I'm sure he'll probably be accepted back into some church somewhere. I'll tell you the only place he should be accepted to, and that's right straight into the wood chipper.
What he honestly said that he didn't know what sex was?
It's what he told them in his statement.
And he tried to use that as some kind of excuse? Yes,
and I'm here to tell you, you can go anywhere and find the lowest IQ people in the community, and somehow they figure out how to reproduce.
Yes.
So I'm not buying that he's too dumb to know.
No, not at all.
No. And he's also claiming that he didn't know it was wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Well, he was saved and sanctified, communicating with the Holy Ghost every day, and God didn't show him it was wrong, So it must have been okay.
Wow.
Man, sometimes
it's a moral failure, though, boys. It's a moral failure.
A moral failure, yes.
No big deal.
Failure. That is, like I said the other day, that sounds like a weak-kneed politician right there. Speaking.
Yes, it does, Kana. You are correct. Now I know people are going to be listening at this point and be like, "Well, but he apologized." We'll get to that. Don't worry. We're addressing his initial comments first. So this is what he calls, and again, we're guessing, but we think we got a good educated guess. This is the situation he was talking about, given the time frame and all that, and how close he would have been to the situation because of Mosley being in God's missionary church at least when the abuse started.
Right.
How can you call this a moral failure? But then go on to actually let's play some more of the clip. Let's let him talk about some other things, and we'll see how strongly he feels about some other issues.
True, and he can help you, and he can salvage you, and he can put you on the right way, and I believe this is the right way. But, there's been some tragedies. But by and large, across our movement, we have some phenomenal lines. Even if you're a second-generation Christian, if you have parents who have done their best to take you to church, take you to camp meeting, and want you to...
Let me stop it real quick right there. That, in my opinion, is an excuse. I hear this used a lot. Yes, we've had some tragedies, but overall, we're fine. That's not the way to address this.
It's a numbers game. It's a small percentage. It's insignificant. It's only happening to the humans that Jesus said was the most important. The children.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. There's no leaders that he said was important. He came and rebuked all of them. But the children are the ones that he said they're the most important. And he also said that you ought to get the death penalty rather than harm one.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's how strongly he felt about it. All right, I'll continue on.
Come to Bible college. You ought to thank God for it, and don't you ever just carelessly cast that away. I've been given something that does not contain a price. This jewel has been a precious one. Its rays have touched my life. It's a heritage of holiness, and to it I will hold on, lest I lose this precious vision that generations have passed on. I don't want to lose the vision. I don't want to take for granted the heritage of holiness that has been passed on. And I don't want it just to be a dry, dusty heritage that I just keep. But I don't want to lose the fire in my own soul, and I don't want to lose the glory in my own soul. And I long for his outpouring in a fresh way in 2023 across our land. But you know, days turn into months, and months turn into years. And you're going to go through a lot of things in life, and a lot of chapters. And kids may walk over your heart, and people you had confidence in may walk away. And people start to lose the love of what they once held dear. My prayer on this morning in this session, and forgive me, I guess I'm preaching a little bit, but may I never lose the value of a clean and spotless soul. For the holy way is the only way to achieve our final goal. If I walk away from this way, you can count on it. If I get some big church somewhere, preach some new diluted gospel, if you see me in short sleeves and shorts and the trappings of the world, if you see us move a television into our home, go the way of the world, you can just count on it, Brother Plank's backslid. And you can count on it, the kids that have walked away.
We stop for a minute. He's literally saying this as there's a huge projector screen behind him. I mean,
oh God!
If it wasn't for double standards, they would have no.
Ain't that the truth?
That's the truth. That is so true.
The mental gymnastics that they go through. But I also want to hit on this heritage of holiness.
Yes,
it is just one of the things that they idolize. They have so many idols in their life. Heritage of holiness, idol. Men, James Plank, Dan Stetler, all these people, all the old and the old preachers. They idolize them. They put them up on this pedestal. Mm-hmm. They idolize buildings. They're like, oh, you know, I mean, and James Plank's one of the worst about it. Oh, he got to tag everything on X at the Wesley Center, or at least he did before he blocked me. I don't know. I assume he still does. They idolize their rituals. You know, they're not only their dress code, all the little things they do, everything's idolized, and then ultimately we know that they idolize stained glass windows.
That is great.
Why do they worship this so much? Like, why the heritage, quote unquote, of holiness so much that he's not even preaching about Christ. He's preaching about his freaking religion. That's all he cares about, is freaking religion.
We need a little more volume and hashtag more morale.
Yes.
It makes me so angry. I don't understand it, how they have gone so far away from Christ, yet they cry victim. Because God forbid somebody stands up to their freaking religious little teachers, preachers, whatever BS you want to call it. It's so frustrating. And I've been reading in First Timothy, and it's talking about be careful of false teachers.
Yes.
And now this came out, and I'm like, the false teachers right here.
This is it.
How about this? 2 Timothy 3:2. For men shall be lovers of their own selves.
Yep.
Covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents. That's the only one I ever really heard about in that scripture.
Yes.
You know,
yeah.
Might have been something to do with the way I was as a kid, but you know, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection. And I want to come back to natural affection. Truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good, traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God. Here's the one though. Verse 5, having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof, from such turn away. And I'll tell you what, these people don't fit that to a T. They have a form of godliness. They have a uniform. They have their little social club with a dress standard, but they have no power. They are just a slight different than the Catholics. They don't go to the priest, but they have a preacher. They don't embrace the power of the Holy Spirit directly in their lives, and they rely on the things they do. And then they have all that. We got to get into fear too, because they just fear dying and screwing up in the last 5 minutes.
Yes.
They're just, that's part of the reason they have fantasies of the rapture, is because they're so scared that they're going to screw up and miss it. I just hope I make it. I just hope I make it. Man, you can get rid of that fear. You don't have to be worried about that all the time.
Yep.
But this natural affection thing, I had to do a little digging on that in the last few days, because, I've always heard them preach natural affection or unnatural affection being applying to homosexual desires.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I think that a much more powerful definition of this is loving the church, the organization, more than you love your children and the children that are being raised in the church.
Oh, I never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
That isn't a natural affection. Why do you love an organization, a book of rules, more than you care for your family? Clearly, if they cared for more their family, maybe so much sexual abuse wouldn't go on.
Well, I have seen situations where, without a doubt, the family was put on the back burner for the CHM.
What about the woman that took her
time.
daughter to the hotel room so the evangelist could enjoy her?
Oh, yeah.
That would be the Walter Bradshaw
lacked
scenario.
natural affection.
Yeah. Bradshaw. Yeah, that's right.
Dropped her off at the motel.
How? That's horrible. I can't even imagine.
That's an interesting point, Ben. I've never thought about it that way, but I think you're onto something.
Good.
Yeah.
It's really good.
And you can count on it, the kids that have walked away from this heritage to go the way of the world are backslid too. I don't care if they stand behind pulpits, they're backslid. And you need to pray for them like backsliders. We don't be mean to them, and we don't say that to their face or anything unkind, but it's true. It's true. And I don't like this sugarcoating of it. I deeply appreciate the great people in our movement across the years. And I'm thinking of one in particular that has a daughter who's serving God, but has a son who has gone the way of the world, involved in church work, but so far away from God. And I've been close to this older man, and I've been with him many, many times. He never runs down his kid, never talks bad about him, but he never acts like he's okay. He's grieving in his soul. I really have a hard time when I ask people, how's your kids? Oh, well, they're doing great. Son's a doctor. My daughter-in-law is, working in a good place. They have a beautiful home. Their kids are doing great. And how are they doing spiritually? Oh, well, they go to a big church and they're involved in their church, and they, I'm happy for that. But they didn't go our direction. Well, it's not our direction. This is God's direction.
All right, I'm going to stop it there.
Oh, my God.
I can't listen to any more. It's like nails on a chalkboard.
It's ridiculous.
This is the biggest. This is BS. This is pure BS. The man is literally saying that people that walk away from the holiness heritage, from this holiness way, CHM, even if they're in a pulpit, he says, they're still backslidden because they're not CHM. That is bull.
Yeah.
That is so far from the truth. And quite frankly, I hope people are listening. The thing that fires me up too is there's people that listen to this that are unfortunate enough to believe it.
Oh, yeah.
That's what really bothers me.
Don't think for themselves.
You got somebody that's, maybe the CHM way isn't working out for them. And quite honestly, I don't blame them at all. It didn't work for me. But you come under this illusion that if I don't, I could go try the other church down the road, but I'm backslidden. And therefore, what's a backslider do, guys? They go to hell.
I know people that's in that situation that they're so screwed up mentally that they believe that they would have to go live a life that they know they can't live.
Yep.
Their parents, they saw their parents lie. Their parents lived a lie. They know they can't live it, but they still believe that's the only way to get to heaven. And I'm sorry, but God's not that small. If you believe God is real and if there is a God, he cannot be that small that this little minuscule group that can't get 5,000 people together once a year out of, what do we got, 8 billion people in the world now?
Yeah.
You know, and we got to have this one little dress code. I mean, there's far more Amish and Mennonite and these other cults than there are of CHM people. We just have this shared background and this understanding of it. I can't go, you know, talk to and get Amish people out. You got to have a Eli Yoder or somebody like that that can make a difference with them. You know, we actually can't even have that much of an impact because the people that share our history is so tiny. There's no way that God's that small.
Yeah.
Not at all.
My thing is, like, where's this scripture to back this up? Where does the Bible say that these people are backsliders?
Yeah.
It don't.
Where's
First Plank 119.
First Plank 119. Am I right? I'm right.
Amen.
Oh gosh.
So let me throw something else in here real quick before we continue on with this. I have seen many comments of people saying, well, if you disagree with it, why don't you just move on and just go do your thing and just let us be, or don't listen to the CHM preachers or whatever? Because it's not that simple. What Jim Plank's preaching here is dangerous. So if it's dangerous, why would I just walk off and be like, I'm not going to warn anybody about it? You know, I'm not going to try to warn anybody else that this is a bunch of baloney, that you shouldn't follow this. Yeah. That's ridiculous. No, this is dangerous. This kind of preaching right here confuses people. And
yeah, I can't imagine how many young, impressionable kids he just screwed up there in that chapter.
Right.
He's going to hold an account.
Mentally and spiritually.
Oh,
because
yeah.
they're half of them are going to go along, and especially the less sincere ones that kind of like, you know, they've got their friends and they've got their group, and you know, we all know those types that just kind of go with the flow. They don't believe it. They're probably not even saved. They have zero relationship with God. If they do, or if they did, if they really talk to God, you know, I believe I heard a lot. I don't know about y'all. I heard a lot about spirit of discernment, and these people have zero. You know, when Marvin Mosley can be getting behind a pulpit, the sacred desk, you know, we can't even call it a stage. It's a platform. And you know, he's standing behind the sacred desk. We all know people that had a beard, or, you know, the woman had cut hair. Maybe she just got saved or something, and they wanted to give a testimony, or they wanted them to sing or something. And they didn't allow them on the platform because they idolized that platform. That's just a little wooden stage so much that they that was so important, and it's such a big deal. You have to be saved and sanctified and confirmed in membership to get up there. But meanwhile, this man for 15 years is messing with little girls and getting up behind the pulpit, and God didn't tell any of them. I mean, what happened when the prophet Nathan came? His life was on the line when he came and approached David about his sins with Bathsheba and sending her husband off to get murdered. You know, you're telling me that God doesn't, if these people actually have a relationship with God, he doesn't show them this?
Well, especially for a movement that, I mean, let me put it this way. It was always portrayed to me that the preacher was told by God. I don't know the specifics. I never asked them, okay, how does he get a hold of you? Does he call? I don't know. I don't know all the specifics.
Is there a number you get when you graduate from 55
Who pays the bill? But
is it a long distance call? I mean, is it better now that we got Starlink or what?
Yes. Yes. So I never knew the specifics, but I was under the impression that God told preachers what to preach pretty much every night.
They tell you that. They verbally tell you that. Or then when we have one of these great song services, like if a in charge who also had a long-term affair, you know, that he was a good emotional manipulator, and then they would be like, yeah, God told me there wasn't going to be any preaching because I really didn't have anything for today.
That just means you were lazy and didn't prepare anything.
Bingo.
Wonder how many times they slipped the song leader a 20 and was like, drag this out, bud. I got nothing for tonight.
How many times are we going to sing "It's So Good to Be Free" until these people start shouting, put a lampshade on their head and run around?
Oh man.
Yeah.
That's another thing too with those kind of services. Sometimes I sit and I try to figure out what it was that I saw back then, because I used to get wrapped up in it too. And honestly, I sit down and I'm like, what was it all emotion? Was all of it emotion? Was there some where God worked? I don't know the answer to that. I really don't.
I think it's emotional manipulation. And, there was a guy that was kind of a Sunday school teacher. He was one of them. His nose was always a little higher in the air, the Delaware church. And the one time he liked to talk about his Baptist friends at work and, put them down. And he liked to talk about, you could go he was somewhere and it was either something patriotic. He's like, I kind of had a similar effect as I get here, but I can tell here it's different because God's in it. And I'm like,
Okay.
no, it's really not different, dude. It's really not. It's that emotional roller coaster.
Oh yeah.
And when you're cynical enough, and a lot of them are, they know how to manipulate it. And I think that's one of the biggest differences too with this generation of preachers, and even the everyone that comes along, they just have less and less charisma. The Marshall Smarts and the Archie Atwell seniors and some of those guys, man, they could keep your attention. They were funny. They didn't preach scripture, but they were entertaining. They keep you tuned in, right?
Oh,
but with every generation, these guys there's just more and more faith, and they just have no charisma. And the other thing is, most of these guys have no life experience. They have gone, to their Christian school. They've gone to the cult indoctrination centers, also known as UBC, Penn View, Hope South. They go get their first job in a church, and maybe they have a little side job, but they probably go work for somebody that attends the church.
Yeah.
So these guys have no real life experience. And we have the same problem in politics, is that none of our leaders have actually ever done anything. They've just occupied these cushy positions and made policy. And these churches are a political structure. I don't think any of them. I mean, and this goes way beyond the CHM. The church structure and the whole organization overall, I don't think any of it resembles early churches. I don't think any of it is how it was supposed to be, and like when Jim Plank's talking about a rich heritage, dude, you can't even go, what was John Wesley, like the 1700s, 250 years ago? That's as far back as you can go. But they would throw him and Jesus out of the church if they showed up looking like they did when they walked on the earth.
Yep. John Wesley would not be accepted in the CHM church today.
Back to the early church.
No,
all they can track back is to the Catholic Church and the traditions that they've drug along with them.
Yeah, that's one of the things I've noticed when you try to nail down a CHM individual about, okay, when did the CHM start? And they'll say, all the way back in the Bible. All right. No, it didn't. But
that's also that's First Plank 120 is where you're gonna get that information.
Oh, dude, that's great.
Oh Lord.
If my kids go another direction, it'll kill me. And I'll be praying for them as backsliders. Oh, you say that's rough? Yeah, I want somebody's got to get, I told Brother Buckler yesterday, we were talking about somebody, and I said, he has such a wonderful spirit. If we were more like him, things would go better. And he agreed. We laughed about it. And then I said to him, and I've said this before, but somebody, it's nice to be easygoing. And somebody has to panic over something every once in a while. There has to be somebody that'll panic. And you're looking at him right here. I never want to be unkind, and I don't want to be hasty, and I don't want to be rough and rude. But oh, my friend, I want to panic over people that are headed straight toward hell. I really do. Well, that wasn't in the notes, and it's not in your hand.
All right, I think we're good to stop it there.
That should have never. I can tell there was no note. That was just rambling.
I do believe that. That might have been one truthful thing he said in there. Because there was a lot of lies.
Yeah, there was a lot of ridiculousness in there. I'm just so surprised at how small, little, tiny problems such as short sleeves and television and shorts is all of a sudden going to send you straight to hell and you're backsliding. Can't we get some actual biblical stuff in there that might get you in some
They
trouble?
don't have it. They're too shallow.
Yep.
They don't have it.
And again, to go back to kind of the beginning, you look how hard he just railed against short sleeves and TV. How awful it is if you don't go CHM. Things that are not in the Bible, people, by the way. But yet when he's addressing child abuse, it was a moral failure.
No big deal.
Moral
No big deal.
failure. Dude, his apology, he can shove a shit up his
I'd also like to reiterate his manipulation of his kids. And I hope they listen to this. Because did you hear that? If my kids do that, he's threatening his own children in that, which is exactly what Dan Stetler did when he talked about not putting his kids on his Facebook if they went a different way. Like, these guys are manipulating their families. Oh, yeah. And, their families probably won't leave because, they got some pretty comfy jobs. They don't really actually have to work as long as they do what daddy says, but which also means that they're just going to be more corrupt because they don't believe anything. But the manipulation of their own kids in their sermons is pretty telling.
Oh yeah, because those kids, are not going to leave now. I mean, they're scared now. They're scared. They're like, nope. But you know what? That's exactly what my dad used to do to me. If you don't obey the rules of the family, you don't do this, you don't do that, you don't go to Bible school, I'm cutting you off financially, I'm cutting you off completely. Don't show back up here for Thanksgiving. Oh yeah, I heard all that stuff. It happened. And,
where do you think he learned it?
Yeah, 100%.
And then so we're back to they lack natural affection.
Yeah.
I want to bring up a quick side note here to talk a little more about the emphasis that they put on things that are not biblical. By the way, people, he's talking about having a TV as if it's bad. What in the heck do you think your smartphone is? Can we talk about that for a second? Come on, guys. I mean, we're not stupid here.
Listen, how in 2020, when COVID hit, did they set up a Sports Center TV set?
Where'd they say it at?
If they never watched TV. Because I'm going to tell you, there's no mistaking how they had that set up. I'll tell you what, the Holy Spirit did not impart on them the wisdom of how to set up the lighting and set everybody up and sit there with their notes and, hey, look,
Yeah, isn't that the truth? That was popping. Yeah, exactly.
Straight off ESPN, buddy.
Well, also, too, did y'all see that thing? I think it was Brian Holiness shared. It was Natalie and her husband. They were doing the screen comparison.
Yes.
And then, once the screen got to a certain
tape measure.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's exactly what they do. That is 100% what they do. Is as long as it fits in the pocket or fits in the closet for when some pastor friend of yours may come over, you can shove it in the closet real quick. But as soon as you can't shove it in the closet, it is sin. You can no longer have it.
That used to be a running joke, Kanan, with a bunch of us CHM people, was about, oh, what, you got your TV in the closet? Like it was like, oh no, we'd never think of doing that. Ha 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 ha. Like it was some big sin.
Well, dude, I don't know if I ever told you this, Phil, but one of my mom and dad's worst fights that I can remember as a kid was because my dad was yelling and screaming, wanting my mom to put the TV in the closet because we had some family members coming over that didn't believe in it. We lived a double standard.
Yes.
That was probably one of the worst fights I remember. It was ridiculous.
I have a sibling that I know it got put away when my parents came around.
Yep.
And how are you going to lead a church? And when you cannot be an honest man and live your life, because obviously you don't believe it, but when daddy is so proud that you're the preacher's son, and you gotta keep up appearances. They're just dishonest people, and the whole fact that this sin-free life, never committing a sin, it all sets them up for the fall and to actually sin worse. And it absolutely demands dishonesty. So they'll never be honest about any of it. So therefore, they're all guilty of the sin of lying.
And again, stuff that's wasn't ever mentioned in the Bible. Again, for people listening to this, if you're on the fence and you're listening to this, please keep that in mind. This is stuff that's nowhere near being in the Bible. Now, they will try to tell you, oh, we have biblical principles. You ain't got a principle for saying TVs is going to make you a backslider. It's not there. You ain't got the principle.
No.
Now, if you personally don't want to have a TV, fine. That I ain't got no issue with that. And in fact, as Anderson is getting older, I'm kind of like, I want to limit his time in front of the TV just because I don't, I want him to be a normal kid. But that's different than saying if you have a TV.
An abnormal kid. You don't want him to be a normal kid.
True, Ben. Yes.
Screen time all day.
Yes. And so that's different than saying if you have a TV, that's a sign you're a backslider.
Mm-hmm.
That's not true. That's not true at all.
It's a personal choice that you're making for your own family. But these people can't stand on their own and make a personal choice. It all has to be, well, it's God's way. It's the old-fashioned holiness way.
Mm-hmm.
No, dude. No, just take a step down from your pedestal. You're just like the rest of us. You put your pants on one leg at a time, and just take it down a notch. It's not God's way. It's Jim Plank's way. It's Dan Stetler's way.
Yes.
It's any of these other false prophets' way. It's not God's way. You're just trying to elevate yourself to a position that you can't rightfully hold.
Because, Ben, if it was God's way, he would have said it. He would have put it in the book. It's not there.
Well, he left some stuff out. That's why we have the James Plank Gospel. We said all the Bible. We got to add it.
Oh, man.
Oh.
We can't expect God to have covered all these things or to inspire a living word that is applicable to today.
Right.
We can't expect that. God's not that big. We put him in a little box down here.
That's another one I hear. I have heard lately. We couldn't expect God to write all this stuff in the Bible. It would have took up volumes. Listen, dude, all the principles are there.
Well, and that's just ignorance because history repeats itself and there's nothing new under the sun.
Yes.
We all think we're special, and I'm here to tell you, we're one of 8 billion, and the world keeps right on going when we're gone. We're all just a little grain of sand, and that's one of the problems with the social media era is that we all think we're important, but social media is not all bad.
We all start podcasts and stuff.
We've all come together. Can you imagine all the people that left the CHM or any of these other crazy groups in the 80s, the 90s, 2000s?
Oh, yeah.
And when they left, they are not here anymore. And they went out into deep sin. They probably went to the Nazarene church, but
Yes.
And so they're just gone, Well, now they can't quite lie about those people like they did because we're still friends with them on Facebook.
Yes.
Yeah, we can see some things now that we didn't used to be able to see.
It's a little harder. There's a little more accountability for them, and boy, they sure bristle at accountability.
Yes. Yes, they do.
That is the truth.
And no one more than James Plank, who has successfully surrounded himself at every position with yes men. And that is such a weakness for him because any organization, any business, the bigger it is, the more successful you are, the more important it is that you have honest people that will tell you the truth and not let you get way off and destroy it all and hold you accountable. The people that are trustworthy and, guys like Jim Plank, he won't have one single one of them. And I know that for a fact because I know people that's been on the board and have tried to stand up to him. And he's like, well, I'm going to do it my way anyways. Well, why do you have a board? Well, you can go ahead and see your way out. And he'll replace them with some new Penn View graduate.
Yeah, it's never good to be surrounded by yes men. You got to have somebody that'll be willing to tell you when you're messing
up. Weakness.
Yes.
Leads to corruption, leads to decay. And then when the facts come out, it's a way bigger scandal and a way bigger problem because it's gotten way further down the road and it involves more serious things than could have been stopped earlier on.
My little side note I wanted to make here real quick, talking about the emphasis that they put on what the CHM thinks is sin and what is actually sin. Example here, child molestation. So Brian Holiness posts this, and it starts getting a lot of attention. It's up over 10,000 views now. People that have seen this clip of Plank and seen their post. And so Jim started getting a lot of flack, some even from within the CHM, which I was very happy to see, and was glad that some of those guys like David Fry and I think Mark Stetler, that they stuck their neck out and said, this is wrong. So then they start getting some of this pressure. And I want you to listen to this preacher in Indiana. Of course, he addresses it. Let me just play it. Oh, well, I'll just play it.
I want to be careful here, but it is evident that there are some things that are taking place in the holiness movement. And I want to say, whether you agree with statements or not, friends, we are never to attack one another. That's not love. That's not holiness. And I'm going to be very honest with you as a church. My heart is devastated, broken, and crushed at some of the things that I'm seeing and I'm hearing. And I can tell you this: the enemy of my soul, the enemy of your soul, is having a heyday. He's rejoicing. And I will say this evening to us as a church: social media is never a place to vent and air your laundry.
Okay, I'm going to stop it right there. The reason I played this, so this guy is out there talking very somber. In fact, the first time I heard it, I almost thought the clip was messed up and I was hearing it in slow speed for some reason, because he was speaking so slowly.
Yeah.
And, his voice, his tone was so low. And I'm like, okay. But so this is him. He's saying that he's very burdened, and he's referencing, unless I'm mistaken, he's referencing the Jim Plank situation. Okay. So Jim Plank got some pushback for something that he said, and rightfully so. I never once have heard a CHM individual, maybe it's happened and I just haven't heard it, if they would come out like this when the Marvin Mosleys of the world are arrested, or when Bradshaw, when that's all found out, and if they would act this upset about it, about kids getting molested.
Stevens?
Yes.
They invited Sheldon Stevens back onto the stage, platform, after he was exposed and prosecuted.
But I don't hear these guys acting at all like this when that happens, when kids are messed up for life. But Jim Plank gets some feedback, and all of a sudden you'd have thought this man was announcing that 9/11 had just happened. What the heck?
That's what it sounded like.
It's a perverted form of Christian unity. We do not attack, but because they're the only chosen ones, they're free to attack any other church or the church that the backsliders go to, Mm-hmm. And Christian unity is it's an interesting subject to get into, because it's a very integral part of being a Christian, of not de-Christianizing other people, not writing them off as they're not a Christian, or they're not, there's certain things that okay, well, a Christian wouldn't do that. But, I think we probably have a lot different scope than normal. But, something I read said Christian unity comes with Christian maturity. And that makes a lot of difference. Makes a lot of sense why there's so much division, and why the CHM just always draws lines of division. And they're so immature. That's why they're like, we're the ones with the full light. When they really just have a shallow doctrine, and they're using their unbiblical standards to affirm it.
You talking about Christian unity? I mean, that was never emphasized when I was a kid in CHM. In fact, I can remember my younger brother, he just mentioned it again the other day. He said, I remember being a kid and being in Walmart and just thinking, man, ain't it a shame all these people in here is going to hell but us.
Everybody was going to hell but us.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. That's how can God be that small? He created all these people to then go send them to eternal damnation. That just doesn't make good sense.
Yeah.
God is love. God loves the people he creates, I think there's got to be a lot harsher turning of your back on him before whatever hell is your destination.
I was talking with a friend of mine. He's a pastor. He's no longer CHM, but I was asking him about whether he believed in eternal security or not. Which once saved, always saved is what we always called it in CHM. And he said, I'm kind of somewhere in between. He said, I think that you can absolutely turn your back on God. He said, but I think it is much more rare and much harder to do than we were led to believe in the CHM. We were kind of taught that you could pretty much just lose it in the middle of the night and not know it.
Oh yeah.
Until you dropped into the pits of hell.
And the minute you lose it, that's when the rapture is going to happen, and you're going to miss it, and you're out of luck.
Yes.
And that's why these people live in so much fear. That's one of the biggest drivers of the fear that they all live under. And I'm telling you, I haven't met a one of them that has any sort of security in their salvation. And that can't be of God. Just flat out cannot be.
Yeah. So again, the reason I just brought that clip up was the CHM has got their emphasis wrong. They've got their emphasis wrong. You should not freak out because your leader is getting called on the carpet. I mean, that's good Lord. These guys so many of the CHM people pay attention to politics. They know how it goes. It's not that big of a deal. Truth never fears a challenge. Just defend your positions if you can. I don't think they can, and then move on.
They're scared that the truth will come to the surface. The truth always does come to the surface. The truth, it demands to come to the surface. And their secrets that they all tried so hard to keep is exactly what has destroyed them. It is why they are dead. I mean, there's, whatever of them left, but it is a dead organization. There's nothing I laugh when they call it a movement. I don't know where's the movement, because there's nothing moving. These skeletons always come out of the closet. They just think that they're going to somehow talk God out of punishing them for it in the next life or when the rapture magically happens. But most of them come out sometime in this life. There's a few guys that I've heard stories about that their secrets were successfully hidden until they were dead, but most of them died younger. But truth needs to come to the surface. That's what John Deloney talks about. The body needs to tell the truth. That's the way most crimes are solved, especially before technology. People told on themselves because they need to tell that they did wrong.
Yes. So we covered that. We probably should, Ben, we should probably get into the, cover a little bit of Plank's response. You reckon?
Yes, sir. And I just want to make sure that we all know that we're to be watching our backs and our surroundings, because I'm pretty sure that the Lord is going to lay it, or something's going to lay it on Jeremy Fuller's heart, that we all need a punch in the nose after this episode comes out.
I'd forgotten about that. The old Fuller fist bump.
I'll never forget about Jeremy Fuller punching somebing, being sanctified, pulling his best Marshall Smart.
Just cut to Jeremy Fuller, like in the Rocky workout scene, just punching stuff, running up steps.
He's gonna have a long run to West Texas, brother. Dude, I hope he eats some weeds before he takes off.
One to him.
But hey, I will be in Ohio in about 3 weeks, so it'll be a shorter drive for him. I'd love to have a conversation with him.
So I started getting flooded with links yesterday, and saw that Jim Plank had responded. So this was on IHC's Facebook page, and I'll read his statement. James Plank responds to comments and questions regarding a recent session taught at Union Bible College and spread on social media. I'm heartsick that my recent comments at Union Bible College were hurtful. For the confusion and division they have caused, I am embarrassed and sincerely sorry. First, in my zeal to encourage the students to walk the holy way, never to throw away their heritage and convictions, I was too strong to say that people were backslidden who had done, quote, this, and this, end quote. Though I hold my convictions inviolable, how do I say that? Oh boy, I was on a roll. Inviolable. Dang it, Jim. The way I stated things publicly for everyone was not how.
That's how you know you're not the best and the brightest.
The way I stated things publicly for everyone was not how they should have been expressed. Secondly, I firmly believe in justification by grace through faith alone. While I firmly believe in our Bible-based standards of separation, I want to enunciate that those standards do not save us, not by any works, lest any man should boast. Neither is it our joy to walk in the... Sorry, let me try it again. Rather, it is our joy to walk in the light in a love relationship with our Lord and Savior. This wonderful way is what I have always believed and endeavored to preach. That it was expressed differently than that and or understood differently than that, I am sorry. Thirdly, I cannot speak dogmatically about another man's relationship with God. God alone is the judge and makes no mistakes. As a preacher within our churches, I cherish our heritage and beliefs. It has always been my desire to embrace those in a way that causes others to see their value and desire them. This expression of those beliefs did not accomplish my goal. As I seek your forgiveness for the unintentional harm caused by my comments, I seek your prayers for my ministry and the ministry of my brethren. Pray that the Lord would help us to preach more clearly and forcefully the need to stem the tide against drift and compromise amongst a broken world and woke church. So few seem to see the danger, let alone deal with it. And that while doing so, we are careful with our words not to become a stumbling block to anyone. What I was trying to express, and do so now, it is not where you are or where you have been that concerns me as much as your direction. To see the Bible's principles and standards of separation being thrown away at this late hour is beyond alarming. No man can walk against light and be right with God. It is evident that many who once were careful, conscientious Christians are now giving in to the spirit of this age. I will keep preaching and praying for our churches to uphold those values. Could you stand with me in a cheerful way, in a victorious way? Do not be silent when so much is at stake. Of course, I also vehemently oppose all sexual immorality and perversion among us. For sure, that is weightier than any separation issue. We need to absolutely address abuse through the proper legal channels and take a clear stand on the side of any and all victims. Any sympathy expressed in my message was not for the perpetrators, but for the victims. It seems that some felt this was unclear. For this, I am so sorry. Be assured that my ministry is held accountable through my good wife and family, my church board, my conference board, the executive committee of the Interchurch Holiness Convention, and the advisory and convention committees of the Interchurch Holiness Convention. This represents a total of 73 godly men whom I respect highly. I have leaned heavily upon the executive committee of the IHC from the earliest moments of the knowledge of the publication of my session. Please forgive me for contributing to division and stress among our people over the last few days. I cannot speak for others, but I find everything that has happened so devastating. Please know my heart. I love Jesus. I love people. I love the churches and organizations we are blessed with. I love those who have spoken so freely against me. I truly do. I urge you to unite in love for the holiness way. I wish everyone the very best as we labor together for the kingdom. Kanan, your thoughts?
Man, nice apology, I guess, but I don't know. It feels kind of shallow to me.
In what way?
Am I right about that? It's kind of like, he apologizes, but yet it's like he doesn't really really believe what he's apologizing for. You know what I'm saying?
I do know what you're saying.
Like,
yes.
He's oh, I'm sorry I said this and and offended everybody, but basically, this is what I still, he still believes it. I think he's apologizing because he's got the backlash now, and so many people come out against him, but
including those within the CHM ranks, which again I was surprised to see, was glad to see, but I think that was putting some pressure on him.
Oh, 100%, 100%.
There had to be a lot behind the scenes because he cares about none of our opinions. Buckler got to that too, that people that are not within the CHM don't matter. But there was definitely some some scrambling going on. He was worried about how many people weren't going to show up to IHC and won't be able to claim a record number anymore in the vacation destination and record offerings, which we know that really is the bottom line of what matters. Raising them funds. I don't know where they go. I don't know what they do because they ain't accomplishing anything, but you sure better give your money to the Lord.
Yeah. Well, that was kind of I feel like just a nervous apology,
I can summarize it real succinctly. I'm sorry you didn't like the truth that I shared with you.
More so like, I'm sorry you didn't like my opinion.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, but his opinion is fact and truth. And, those gospels are racking up every time he opens his mouth. It's from his lips directly to stone tablet. It's carved in.
So when I first started reading it, I think the first part of it is good, and as I'm reading it, I'm like, okay, what am I seeing here? Because honestly, I didn't even expect this. But I feel like the farther down in there we got, and I think we can also talk some about Adam Buckler's response, who is the president of Union Bible College, in some of this regard as well. The farther down I got, Kanan, I got the same feeling that you did. Sorry and Ben, like you said, sorry you didn't like it. Let me restate it and just use different words to say the same thing.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I did see between what Adam Buckler said in UBC Chapel and what Plank said there, some of the strongest condemning of sexual abuse we've ever seen from the CHM. So I guess we could take our, all right, there's a win, I guess.
I didn't see anything about the wood chipper.
No, Ben, they didn't mention the wood chipper.
No, they didn't.
But I feel overall, because Buckler said this as well, I'm trying to see if he's got it in his printed statement, that saying that your direction matters. I don't care where you are or as much where you are or where you've been, but where you're headed. Yes, I know. That's what we're all saying. If you're not headed towards the CHM, then you don't matter. That's what it means.
Yeah,
if you're headed our way, you're in good standing with the Lord. If not, then we need to pray for you.
Yeah, if you're still going to a big church and you're not heading over to the CHM church, you're still sinning or backsliding. Sorry, he won't use sinning.
And another thing, they say that people that are throwing away what they once held as strong convictions. It's the same thing. That's the same thing. I used to have what I thought was strong convictions. I used to think that country music was a sin, and I wouldn't listen to it. I used to think rock music was a damnable sin, and I wouldn't listen to it. I used to think
if you turned it on, the floor is going to drop out from under you, and you're going straight to hell.
Oh, yes.
It's just straight down the elevator shaft.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I used to think that watching movies was a sin, and I wouldn't do it. I no longer believe those things because of my spiritual walk and growing in my walk with Christ. So I don't hold those convictions anymore. But I'm not backsliding.
You believe them because of the peer pressure.
Yes.
You believe them because that's what you were told. You didn't believe it for yourself. And all of these people don't believe anything, especially those that are our age and younger. They don't have any of their own beliefs. And that's why you see typically they all get a little more liberal. There's actually some that went to Camp Gilead that's probably gotten more strict and they're non-internet people. And I kind of respect that, even though they're still, it's cult behavior. But, they all, the ones that, they wouldn't never wear anything shorter than a 3/4 length sleeve. Well, now the next generation is wearing short sleeves, or their kids are wearing shorts, or, there's just a little bit of graduals. There's nothing there's no solid basis for what they're saying or their standards.
Yeah.
That's why it keeps gradually moving.
Yes.
Well, that's how they would try to keep you. Is I know a lot of my family, you start talking about, biblical things, and they would say, well, each generation, goes a little bit further, and
yes.
and then where does it stop? Where does it stop? It's like, well, I don't know where the Bible says.
It used to be my exact thoughts.
It's like, my family used that all the time on me, be like, well, your grandpa, he used to never, play Uno. Well, now we allow you to play Uno, and where are you going to stop at? And I'm like, oh, poker all the way.
Y'all were liberals, I tell you. Y'all were real liberals. We had no cards. We had no dice. We used to pick up life games at the garage sales so we could take the spinners out for use them for Monopoly or something. So we couldn't play Monopoly with no dice.
You couldn't use the dice.
Oh man!
See, I knew I was a little better CHM bloodline than y'all.
You've got a much richer heritage, man.
A much richer heritage.
Much richer.
Hey,
Much
I
richer.
am so wealthy in whole heritage of old-fashioned holiness. Am I right? I'm right.
Am I right? I'm right.
And so what sucks now is that, like, now that we have seen the light and left the cult, now we're trying to figure it out for ourselves, and we're trying to raise tiny humans and for them to figure it out for themselves.
Yes.
So, like, how can we make this not confusing while I'm trying to raise kids to know what's right and what's wrong, what's biblical, what's not, and yet, like, I'm still figuring out for myself. So, like, now we're screwed up, and we're trying not to screw up our kids.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, now we're trying to, like, stop this vicious cycle that we don't know how to stop. And it's just really sucky.
Yes. And I think that there's a lot of other people in that same position.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And, I'm probably a little too cynical about things. Maybe not. But you just really, it's real hard to go back because that foundation and basis that you should have been given when you're 6, 8, 10, 12 years old, right. Once you decide that it's bogus, and these things, this group of things that we were told, it's bogus. We can see the evidence. It is not real. Sanctification is not real. Living as above sin is not real. In fact, it is setting you up to commit greater sin by claiming that. Now we have to go question everything we were taught because those people who misled us also instilled these other things in us. So we have to go back and test them and figure out what's real and what's right.
You're absolutely right.
And now our kids are asking us questions.
One of the biggest things you can do with kids, and I hesitate to even say any advice with kids because just setting myself up for failure. But don't instill fear in them of really anything. It's such a problem throughout the secular world, the church world, fear of everything. And that's why I say that we were all mentally traumatized as children. The amount of times that I couldn't find my parents for 20 seconds and I thought the rapture happened and I've been left behind. That is mental trauma.
Crippling
there is no
fear
way
I used to have.
6, 8, 10-year-old kid should be in that position. We shouldn't even have those thoughts. Well, I mean, that we can go down the rapture line sometime. This thing of they kind of concocted this idea like 200 years ago, and it really became more popular about 100 years ago, kind of like the CHM and all these other cults. But if it happens, it happens. No big deal. These people are sitting around fantasizing about an escape. I compare them to people that play the lottery all the time. I used to play the lottery work with a guy named Ray King, and he'd come in, sit down, he'd be scratching his, man, I really need to hit these today. I'll be up out of here. I'll never come back, man. You think these Christians that are fantasizing about the rapture are the same thing. They're just waiting for that lottery ticket to hit. Boom, beam me up, Scotty. I'm out of here. All my troubles are over. Hallelujah, bless God.
Well, you know what? If the rapture takes place, it takes them out of their misery.
Right?
Yeah.
It's the lazy fantasy because rather than go improve their lives, go improve their communities, we're all here for a reason. If you believe God is real, you believe that we have a creator. We're here now for a reason.
Yes.
Fantasizing about living another time, some other time was better. I'm here to tell you, we live in the easiest, the best time, the most creature comforts and luxuries of anybody that's ever lived.
Yep.
We've got it too easy. That's why we have these corrupt leaders that have never had to earn. We're following people that we would never follow into battle. we had to go pick up and fight another army. None of these leaders, whether it's church leaders, CHM leaders, political leaders, we wouldn't fight it. We wouldn't follow any of these fools into battle. And a lot of them have been, they've shirked from any fight. I mean, Jim Plank is so insecure that he has a meltdown when somebody takes a video of him and posts it and says, this is wrong.
Yeah.
He completely has, that's how weak that man is. He tells on himself.
I agree.
You can make a video of me and tell me I'm wrong, and you're probably right. I probably am wrong. And that's okay. I'll improve and whatever. You cannot be that thin-skinned. You cannot. And then you're out here proclaiming that you're living God's way and you're leading people. God, we're the only chosen few that have the full light. It's bogus, man. It's not real.
There was a couple other things here that Adam Buckler said in his statement. He said, so let's consider the matter. What did Brother Plank say? Let me skip one down here. He said the first statement, if I go the way of the world, if you see, and he emphasized me in short sleeves and shorts and the trappings of the world, if you see us move a television into our home, go the way of the world, you can just count on it, Brother Plank's backslid. And then he went on, and you could count on it, the kids who have walked away from this heritage to go the way of the world are backslid too. I don't care if they stand behind pulpits, their backs. Okay, so he's quoting what Plank said. So then Adam says, what he didn't say, if Amy, Jim, or Brother Bob has a TV or wears short sleeves, they're backsliding. He's saying that's what Plank didn't say. Now, maybe I'm having a stroke, but I'm pretty sure that's exactly what he said, right?
That is exactly what he said.
I'm pretty sure.
Almost verbatim.
Yeah.
People that walk away and go the way of the world, because he said, if you see me have a TV, and then he kind of lumped it in, and you can count on it if you see them go the way of the world.
Yeah. And he don't care if they're behind another pulpit, if they're serving in another church, they're backsliders. And he also implied that he's going to lie to your face and tell you, everything's good. But he said the quiet part out loud, what they've always done. They talk behind their back and say, look at that terrible backslider sinner. They're out in deep sin, and they're so far gone. They were raised better. They knew better.
Absolutely. He says the former is a warning, the latter is a judgment. So he's saying that what Plank said was a warning. He was not casting judgment, that if you see someone in short sleeves, they're backsliding. I guess if we really wanted to parse it out here, he is talking about people that leave the CHM and wear the short sleeves. We're backsliding. But so even what Buckler said, that preachers are called to give warnings, but his warning's wrong. I don't care what you call it, he's still wrong.
Yeah, it's still a false warning then.
Yes. And he goes on to talk about if he abandons the principles and convictions that he has held for and heralded for so long, he would be backsliding, moving in the opposite direction of following Christ, summarized as the way of the world. That's wrong. If Jim all of a sudden started wearing short sleeves, big deal.
It matters nothing. A little bit of material, a few threads. It is so insignificant. But what is significant is those little children that are far too often damaged for life. And yes, they can work through it. But the problem is most of them will never get to where they could because it's never handled right. They blame the victims. You must have been seductive, as a 10-year-old girl. There's no sexual development. A prepubescent 10-year-old girl must have seduced that man, and he just couldn't control himself, which is another big chink in their armor. They don't believe in self-control. They believe in abstinence. It's you don't touch anything, or you can't control yourself. There's no self-control at all in their belief system. But I really want to. The other we can comment on that, but up higher when he said social media is not an appropriate platform for these types of discussions. We cannot adequately express ourselves merely by written response. Okay, which is how all John Wesley's letters that they read was all written, right? The Bible, there's no body language, no facial expressions, no inflection of voice. It is often very cold. That's the whole Bible, dude. There's no facial expressions. There's no inflection of voice. What? Because you think you You saying God needs to make a video now? You need to use this modern technology that the real conservative holiness people don't even touch. But that we can't have a written response that would actually effectively communicate.
I feel like that they had some talking points because there were way too many CHM people hitting on the exact same, using the exact same terminology. It felt like when you watch the news and you tune into a couple different stations and they're all using the exact same words, you're like, wait a minute.
Yes.
The whole thing about social media, my opinion, social media is the whole reason that these conversations are happening. It's harder to hide things now with social media. Information is there, just in the click of a button. They're losing the argument, therefore attack the platform. And like you said, Ben, I mean, we've used a written word for thousands of years, and I understand it is harder to convey inflection and tone and all that. And I prefer. That's why a lot of times I send you guys voice messages. Number one, I hate trying to type out a text, and then also if it does get hostile, somebody can hear how I'm speaking a little bit better and realize, okay, I'm not trying to be a jackass. Because a lot of times, I know when I read a message, for some reason, the default is like, oh, he's trying to be a smart aleck. It's just, for some reason, that's kind of our default setting. But still, it's to just attack social media. I think they're just upset that the conversation's happening at all. Social media is causing that.
It's back to resisting accountability at all costs.
Yes.
And somewhere in here, he said a response is not even warranted. Yeah, lastly, a response is not mandatory. While many have called for a response from Brother Plank or myself, we are not obligated. That is this man's word. He is just a man. He is not some holy apostle set up apart, looking down on all of us. It's just a little microcosm of how they've separated us from God. And how the Old Testament ways and how the Catholics do it. And we have to have an intercessor. No, there is no separation. You're no better than anybody else. You're not some untouchable, anointed man. You're just a man. And we all have to be accountable for our actions into somebody. And they resist it at all costs.
Yeah, I felt like when I heard that part right there, it almost sounded like a politician in D.C. when they have to address something that they don't like to, and they kind of get this elite attitude of, you pathetic people. I don't owe you anything, but out of the kindness of my heart, I will respond. No, you had a guy.
Send your taxes and tithes.
Your taxes and tithes. Yeah, you had a guy that was making claims that are unbiblical and untrue, and people raised a fuss about it. I would say a response is absolutely warranted and expected. At least should be. What else did you have on your notes there, Ben?
We covered most of it. I think that we've got enough material out there to hopefully make some people think, man. And, it's just people. I hope people that are, I don't care if you're full-fledged in the CHM, they discount all of us as bitter. And I can tell you, I have no bitterness in my heart. The main reason I even pay that much attention to these people is I'm just astounded by the amount of children that are molested and violated in these groups. And it's over and over. It's not rare. It's common. It is part of the culture. It's part of the culture of secrecy. It's part of, not teaching the kids what's okay and what's not okay, and then believing the kids when they tell you something happened. And it is just so sickening to me. We're all parents, and I'm gonna tell you, I've made the statement, and there's a whole lot of places. I'd let my kids go hang out with a biker gang before I'd let them hang out with a bunch of CHM elitists, because they'd most likely be safer. And if something happened to them, the perpetrator would just disappear. You'd never see him again. They certainly wouldn't be held up as a leader and promoted. And to me, that right there says volumes. That is such an indictment on them, that they just do not take this stuff serious. They just don't care. They put the organization over the individual every time. And if you read the Bible, it is so clear that the children are the most important. It's not these pharisaical leaders. They are not important. And, you know, you can look at all these megachurch pastors. There was just another one this week with a bunch of sexual impropriety. Almost all of these guys end up in some big scandal. You know, back to the higher the position, the more important that accountability is. Mm-hmm. And they just don't take this stuff serious. And it's just sickening. And I don't know. They just minimize it at every turn.
That sure seems to be the way it is. You know, you're talking about not having any bitterness. I mean, I think there's been times in the past I've struggled to make sure, you know, try and stay on top of it. But no, I don't feel. I don't feel hostility towards, you know, obviously I'm upset when they preach this kind of stuff. But in fact, I mean, yeah. I honestly, I would be happy to dialogue with these guys. In fact, I've got a phone line that we put out there all the time. It's a podcast phone line. And
if they can't respect you enough as a man, you know, you and I could have a conversation because we don't see them as our betters. But they can't have that conversation with us because they look at us as less. And
I think you're right.
I think I got sidetracked, but I was, you know, anybody that's like straddling the fence or, you know, I don't care if you're full Ford CHM, just do some introspect. Think about if these people really are the ones that have it right. How are they missing all of this stuff that's going on? You know, and we're not talking like one little incident when somebody touched a girl's leg or something. We're talking 12-year affairs that are coming to light. We're talking 15 years of multiple little girls that are molested. And these guys are preachers. They're not in the pews. They're not just, you know, laymen that are showing up once a week. These are preachers. These are leaders. How, if these people are the ones that have it right, how is that not being exposed? How is it not being put a stop put to it? There's just no way that that's the right. And you know, I wish people just need to think about if they really are free, like how would they feel if it was, especially say a woman, if she put on jeans and a t-shirt tomorrow and went to the store, how would she feel and why would she feel that way? Because I'm here to tell you, it's not a sin. I don't think it's a sin for anybody. I don't think there's anybody with personal convictions against it. I think it's just peer pressure. But then think about why you would be so insecure dressing that way and who you would be worried about seeing you. I think, you know, if some of these people would just stop and think and really be honest with themselves, which most of them have a very hard time doing, they might see things a little different.
Yeah. I think for me to sum up kind of what I think along these lines, and to people that if you're on the fence, read the Bible, find out what it says. I did this with, I had different topics, you know, started with divorce and remarriage. It went to, okay, you know, women cutting her hair, whatever, and get your answers from there and realize then if it's not in the Bible, then it's not in the Bible. And these guys can holler all they want. They can make you feel bad all they want. They can say you're backslidden, but it doesn't matter as far as with you and God.
Men.
Yes. Don't follow them.
Follow men. Men are all flawed.
Yep. If you're saved, you know, believe on the Lord Jesus Christ and thou shalt be saved, Paul told the jailer. Pretty simple process. Then try your best to obey what the Bible says to do. I mean, to me, that just about sums it up. Phil Robertson always says, love God, love your neighbor. That pretty much sums it up.
It has to be simple enough that the lowest IQ person can do it.
Yes.
But man, with his political, religious organizations of whatever stripe, complicates and confuses people. And then, you know, I mean, at that point, that's a lot of evilness. If you're confusing and harming people and misleading them, you're going to be responsible for that.
I agree. Kane and Mariah, you guys got anything you want to wrap it up with?
No, I think it's summed up pretty well, honestly.
I like it. Ben, it's been good having you on, sir.
It's been a pleasure.
I think you need to be a repeat guest.
Yay!
You fit in a little too well with this crowd.
Well, at some point, it's going to have to be in person.
Yes, I agree completely. I need to quit just running my mouth and make a visit to Texas one of these days.
Hey, planes fly every day. You get to Lubbock. I'll pick your ass up.
I like it.